whoever's missing this see the board. But I'll do a quick summary. Yes. Okay. To summarize, first we look at this value, and this value has a name which I'm going to show you in about 2 seconds. If that value is an odd number, there's one answer. That's all you need to know. This number is irrelevant. All you need to know is this odd? Or, you ask yourself, is it odd or even? If it's odd, then we're going to have one answer. Over here, we look at the value inside the radical sign. If that value is negative, there are no real roots. If that value is positive, then we look at the n. If the b value is positive and the n value is even, there are two answers: a positive value and a negative value. Okay, is there anybody who doesn't understand what I just said? Okay, so here's a little vocabulary. As I said, these things have actual names. The value underneath the radical sign we call the radicand, unless you're a negative person, in which case you can call it the radicand. This the number here. The number that tells you what root to take, we call that the index. It is the degree of the root. Just like we had the degree of a polynomial, we have the degree of the root. And that we call the index. That's the degree of the root is called the index. Okay. Again, don't write this down. All right. This is a long, complicated method, but there is a shortcut that I think you should take. How do you find the cube root of a number? What should you use?
Scientific notation.
No. What? A calculator. Take the value you want to find, your root of, and plug it into your calculator. Now, this calculator that I am holding in my hand, it will do you absolutely no good in this chapter because it doesn't have anything beyond square roots, and we're going to be doing more than just square roots. We're going to be doing cube roots, fourth roots, fifth roots. On the other hand, there's not a lot of calculations. It's mostly going to be adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing, which you don't really need a calculator for. But those of you who are, I would say, if you're a sophomore, my suggestion would be to invest in a graphing calculator. But they are expensive. They do cost about $100. Scientific calculators are much more reasonable. They are $10. In the classroom, if you have neither a scientific nor a graphing calculator, you are welcome to use the Inspire calculators. I'm going to update that class list, and I'm going to ask you to only take the calculator associated with your number. That's so that I can keep track of who's using what. If I ask you for the cube root of a value, remember, when we're looking for the cube root, which is an odd number, there's going to be an answer. The fact that this is a negative number means nothing. So the cube root of negative 1,000 is negative 10. But I don't expect you to go through this whole ridiculous process. I expect you to use your calculator. Because, frankly, most of you couldn't figure out the cube root of 27 in your head. Maybe. I said most of you, not all of you. Okay, now, on the other hand, when we're looking for the fourth roots, again, all you have to do is plug into your calculator. Okay? Now, first of all, two things. Number one, what are the real roots of negative 0.0? What are the negative fourth roots of negative 0.001? Remember, if the n is even, I want the fourth root of a negative number. If this is even and this is negative, there are no real roots. The answer is no real roots. This one's easy. The root of any root of 1 is
Itself.
1. Just like 1 to any power is 1. Any root of 1 is 1. Now, as for the fraction, what you can do is we have a rule in math that says, just like we have a rule that says we can apply this rule that says if you have one thing under a square root sign, you can turn it into two things under the square root sign. You can if you don't understand this. So. We also have a rule that says if you have a fraction, it doesn't matter what the value is. Anything under a square root sign can be broken up into its component parts. So if I have I can take the fourth root of 16 over 81, and I can turn it into the fourth root of 16 divided by the fourth root of 81. What you don't want to do is take 16 divided by 81 and put that in your calculator and take the fourth root, because you're going to get a decimal. So you want to be able to simplify it. So you take the fourth root of 16, which is 2. Can't use that calculator.
What if you do 16 square root square root? I get you.
What? 2 of 81 square root square root.
Great.
Okay, now do the cube root of 125. So the cube root of 16 is 2. The cube root of 81 is 3. So your answer would be 2/3. See, if you put 0.666 repeat, I would know you have just plugged it into your calculator, and I will not be